With the situation in Eastern Congo worsening, the question is now, will peace talks happen, or will the conflicts escalate even further? Well, let's assess the potential pathways to stability. Well, joining us this afternoon is Dr. Oluwole Ojewale. He is the Regional Coordinator, Institute for Security Studies in Dakar, Senegal. Good afternoon, Dr. Oluwole. Thank you for joining us today. Hello, Doctor. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining. Well, we're talking about the issue in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Look, so let's take it back a bit. What are a few historical events and long-standing grievances that you would say have contributed to the current instability in the region?
Well, we can go far back as far as 1994 Rwandan crisis, which led to the genocide in which people in their hundreds of thousands were killed. And, this is not something that we want to maybe scratch again. But, at the heart of that crisis was an identity crisis of Tutsi people of that tribe versus the Hutus. And if you look around the Great Lakes region, bordering Rwanda, Burundi, and Congo, these are tribes that cut across the border as a result of the artificial border that colonialism brought to Africa. In other words, people who were living together, who have grown together as the same tribe, by the artificial demarcation of borders in Africa, then put them in 2, 3 countries at the same time. This is experience you see across Africa. Then we come back to 1996 and the early 2000 War of Congo, and then put all this together, we arrive at where we are today because of the historical neglect and at the same time, long-standing identity conflict that has plagued the entire region, particularly these 3 countries that I mentioned. So you see identity at the heart of the crisis. And then in the recent time, we've also seen the role that the extractive sector, the endowment in DRC, is probably playing in this. And you don't have to take my word for it. The UN report is out there and is more authoritative than what anybody can say that points in this direction.
Okay, but we've seen how these ethnic tensions have now grown into regional rivalries. So how does this intersect with the economy and also political challenges in the DRC?
Yes, the DRC is a story of a failed state, if I could put it that way. I remember the last time I traveled to Eastern DRC when I was in the city of Goma, and I interacted with people. And one of the very stark statements that I heard from them is that there are people living in Goma, as we are projecting on TV now, who will never see Kinshasa till they will die. And the reason is simple, because the region is not linked to the southern part of the country that is more wealthier, and then where you have the seat of government. There's no road. Armed groups have taken over all the jungles. And so therefore, you see a situation in which it appears like the Eastern DRC is cut off. And in the context of this, what is at the center is the abundance of natural resources in the Eastern DRC, which is developing other part of the world, which has become a critical conversation in the global energy transition. And I'm talking about 2 mineral resources in particular. Coltan that is used for the semiconductor that powers our phone, and cobalt that is now very strategic to power batteries as the world is moving away from fossil fuel. Congo is about one of the very few countries that has this in abundance, large deposit. There is a World Bank report that says if the minerals in Congo is mined today and is put on, and they quantify the value, it will be equivalent to about $24 trillion. But as you can see on the video that you are projecting on TV, as I'm talking to you, you can't see that reflecting in the quality of lives of the people. So this is what has put the country in a very state of dilemma, and then that a new layer of conflict, protracted war, is now added to the misery of the people. So a country that is largely endowed in resources, but that is not translating to improvement in the quality of life of the people. So you have economic promises, but that is delivering zero quality or zero improvement in the lives of the people. Congo is only potentially rich, but in terms of actual wealth, that has been vaporized.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the minerals that Congo has, like the cobalt, coltan, as well as the diamonds. Because I'm about to ask, how do these domestic actors, as well as international interests, contribute to the resource-driven violence? So how does it impact the dynamics of this ongoing conflict?
Yes, it impacts because all over the world, anywhere that you have conflicts, you have war like this, at the heart of it is either the issue of livelihood or resources. And it could be mineral resources like you have seen in Congo. It could be as simple as water resources, as we have seen between Ethiopia and Egypt in the recent time. It could be as simple as environmental resources like logging, all kinds of things that the providence has really endowed with such country. And it could be as simple as land. So in the context of the Democratic Republic of Congo, while I said earlier that the conflict, the war has a long history, and it depends on how far you want to stretch it. I started from 1994, but you can even take it back to the days in 1884 when Africa was actually balkanized by the European colonialists. So you have the King Leopold and all kinds of historical accounts that have shaped the country over the years and has driven the country to where it is now. So why those identity issues are the foundational issues. What is also very important is that armed groups need to sustain their violence, and they will do nothing. They will stop at nothing that we debar them from exploring the natural resources that is present in that country. Coltan, for instance, you have Rubaya in North Kivu, not too far from Goma, that has a very vast deposit of that. It is that Goma now, the North Kivu, that the M23 has taken over. So why it might be a minimalist explanation to tell you here that resources is at the center of it and is the primary driver. No, it is beyond that. But the resources is now a very strong factor that is driving the conflict far from the foundational issues that I've mentioned. Because to be able to sustain the violence, armed groups must be able to lay hold of those essential resources that they can pass through the global supply chain to final destinations in Shanghai, New York, Europe, anywhere in the world where those resources are being used by tech companies.
Well, let's look at the humanitarian impact of this conflict on the people. Well, we're seeing a recurring cycle of violence, and that has affected long-term prospects for community rebuilding and reconciliation, particularly regarding displacement and basic access. So how does this affect the people and, of course, their plan to rebuild and, of course, stay on in that region?
It is horrible. It is not even about rebuilding now. It is about stabilization. How do you get essential resources to people who are living in those makeshifts that I'm seeing on the screen? Kids cannot go to school. Hospitals are closed. Hygiene is extremely poor. There is no better word to describe the situation. I have a friend that works with the UNICEF who just returned from DRC not too long ago. And those accounts are very horrible accounts. And I'm sure you can see that. You're also projecting it on the screen. So, and when you look at the outcome of the SADC and EAC meeting in Tanzania, I think the communique is so watery that you can know that the end is not in sight yet. So I think where we are now is to be able to see global powers, humanitarian organizations who can actually prevail in the circumstances in which DRC has found itself now and save the people from further misery. But to talk about what things are now, I think life has retreated to the Obasian era in which life is brutish, life is short, and people can even be cut off anytime. I think Congo is now behind civilization, looking at the sheer mystery that this war has brought onto the people.
Well, let's look at, the roles neighboring countries and regional alliances play in either escalating or mitigating this conflict. So we just spoke earlier of a meeting that took place over the weekend. They're still trying to find its resolution to the conflict. But we also understand the DRC is a full member of the African Union and the International Conference on the Great Lakes region. Well, what would you say? Would you say these alliances are doing enough to make sure they help handle the issue in the DRC? And what could they be doing better to help regional countries that are having conflicts like this?
The people who are trying to mediate the crisis also have their own interest. And it is very difficult, for instance, when you look at South Africa, that is also negotiating for peace, that is negotiating peace. You can't be mobilizing the military for offense purpose in the first place, and then at the same time be showing up on the negotiation table. You talk about Uganda, you talk about Burundi. These countries are non-aligned in the crisis that is happening in the region. They are aligning with one protagonist or the other, and that complicates the crisis. And you talk about the African Union. This is not a crisis that just started today. You can recall how the situation in Sudan has now escalated beyond, and it's about the most consequential humanitarian crisis in the world now. So what has AU done in that regard? So I don't think they are going to act exceptionally when it comes to the case of DRC, because the pointers are there in terms of what we've seen in Sudan, another conflict hotspot in the world. Perhaps maybe AU itself is also overwhelmed by the crisis on the continent now, from Sahel to the Horn of Africa to Cabo Delgado in Mozambique. And then at the center of it now, we have the DRC crisis. So where do we go from here? I think we've gotten to the point in which we have to look beyond those two regional communities in which peace negotiators also have their own ulterior interests, to probably look for like 5 credible voices among the heads of state in Africa, drawn across the board, to actually help to navigate this particular crisis now. You look in West Africa, maybe Nigeria, Ghana. You look in North Africa, maybe you pick Egypt or Algeria. Then look in East Africa, pick another reliable head of states. And then you go to Southern Africa, maybe pick the Angolan president, Lorenzo, to be able to pick these people together and find a lasting solution to the crisis. I'm not optimistic in terms of what has come out from the EAC SADC joint meeting in Dar es Salaam. And I think we need to look beyond that solution. Looking outside Africa will be painting a picture in which it appears like the African lacks the agency power to be able to resolve our own internal contradictions. But even though I've condemned that in the past, if that is what is going to bring lasting peace, I think we need to explore all angles now, because one death actually diminishes our humanity. And when you have a situation in which body tolls, deaths is counting in their thousands now, I think it shows that there's a need for urgent action to find at least a short-term and long-term solution to the crisis. And the beginning of that will be ceasefire.
Okay. Dr. Oluwole, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. But before we let you go, how can both local and international actors work together to build trust, address these grievances, and also promote sustainable peace in that region?
Well, I think that has always been part of the fabric of peace building and our historical experiences in Africa, in which before brothers and sisters will go out to fight one another, they look at internal regulatory mechanism for peace building. But I think maybe modernity has rolled away those virtues now. And the way to go is to actually don't look at this thing in the surface. The identity crisis is at the heart of this, and it has to be permanently resolved before we can find solution, because it's fast becoming an episodic experience. So I think there's a need for that far-reaching interrogation of the state of things in this region, and not really look at it at the superficial level. I think that is what I would suggest. Looking at the historical, the sociological, and the identity crisis of this protracted conflict to be able to actually resolve the issues is the way to go.
Okay. Well, we do hope that they will take those ways, and of course, we hope to see some peaceful resolution to these conflicts in the DRC. Dr. Oluwole, it's a pleasure speaking with you this afternoon. We really appreciate you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you for coming.